Welcome to Construction Genius. And today's episode is a special one. It's actually a republication of an interview that I did on the Bred to Build podcast hosted by Matt Piniella and Breck Coyne. These are two young, dynamic, exciting construction professionals, and they were gracious enough to invite me on their podcast, and we had a deep discussion about construction leadership. So I thought I'd republish the episode here on Construction Genius, just to introduce you to Matt and to Breck, and to give you some insights into my thinking behind my business and my interaction with construction companies, and also on the importance of leadership in construction. I know you're going to enjoy this interview. It's just a little change of pace. Feel free to check out Matt and Breck's podcast, Bred to Build, and enjoy our discussion here today. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Bred to Build podcast, a project dedicated to sharing the stories of the people who build and those who help move construction forward. Before we get into it today, all we ask is if you enjoy the podcast and you enjoy this episode, please take a couple of seconds, write us an awesome review. It means a lot to us. My name is Breck Coyne. I'm the founder of Hammer and Builders of Insta, and today, joined by my co-host, Matt Piniella.
Good morning, lunch, or afternoon, wherever it may be for you. Thanks for joining in to another episode. My name is Matt Piniella, known better as Matt Bangswood, a grimy carpenter from Central California.
Today, we're going to be talking about how to solve your people problems, leadership, and much more. People are the biggest asset in your business, and we have an awesome guest joining us today. Eric Anderton is a trusted leadership advisor, executive mentor, an expert meeting facilitator for construction companies that range anywhere from 10 million to 1 billion. He's got more than 2 decades of career and entrepreneurial business experience alongside of 25 years of public speaking and mentoring. He's got some things under his belt. He also just launched a new book, which we'll get into on this podcast. With that being said, Eric is top of mind when, I think of someone who knows construction leadership and really how to lay the foundation for your people to succeed, especially during times when the economy crashes or just hits the fan. So that being said, Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Eric, it is. And I'm really, really excited about this topic. It's one that hit home. And, when you and I were connecting, Eric, I was like, we absolutely have to get you on the podcast. I did my best to give you a solid intro. Is there anything before we jump in that, that you would like to add about your background that would help our audience, understand what you do a little bit more before we jump in today?
Yeah, sure. I started working with contractors in 2004. I was selling a leadership development program, a worldwide program in the area, Sacramento, California, where I'm from. And my first client ever was a construction company, LB Construction, which is a framing contractor up here in Sacramento. And they're still my client today. So I didn't intend to get into working with construction companies, but I just fell in love with construction right from the beginning. When I was beginning with the leadership development program, I kind of resonate with folks who are in construction. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the work that contractors do. I think there is something very powerful to be able to, drive down the road, point to a project and say, I built that. And I just really like the way that contractors have an impact, not only on their communities in terms of the buildings that they build, but also the people that they employ and overall just the long-term contribution they make to the communities that they're in.
What was like your previous exposure, Eric? Did you have a fascination around the trades growing up? Where did your exposure start?
It's a great question. The answer is absolutely not. I did not have a fascination around the trades. It was something that kind of found me, something that I discovered. And I know it's something where, I'm a builder. I'm a builder of people. That's just where I come from in my background. I have a degree in history. So I've studied people. I've studied psychology. I've studied history, both both ancient and modern. And so I have an understanding of people based on a variety of experiences I have. And I just found that understanding of people, but then the way that it fit into what construction companies do in terms of building projects and building people, there was a synergy there, which it just resonated with me. And when I started my own business in 2013, I pretty quickly niched down to construction, and I've, 99% of my clients now are construction.
I like that you're saying that you're not a huge construction background, but that's where you found yourself, because a lot of the times we see people that say did $1 million in business for their first year, and then they go into I can make you millions in a year.
Yeah, right.
That's the best thing, that you understand people and you're open to that. I think that's a big thing. I'm kind of curious, what are the most common people problems you see in the construction companies today?
The most common problem is hiring the wrong person and putting them into the wrong position. And the way I see that a lot of times is that every company has a particular culture, a way that they behave. And what happens is they bring on someone who's perhaps technically skilled, but they're not a fit for their culture. So one of my clients, the purpose of their business that they've stated is to crush the competition. And they're great guys, but they just love to win. And when they hire people, they look for people who are willing to have that kind of competitive edge to them. And what that means for them is, if you're an estimator, you're going to be in the office at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. You're going to be working on bidding and winning work, and you're not going to leave until 4:30, 5:30 in the afternoon. Or you're going to be out at networking events. You're going to be out developing relationships. You're not going to be clocking in at 8 and clocking out at 5 and just kind of going through the motions.
So do you think that's always the root cause? I mean, I hear it all the time. Matt, he hears it a lot too, but it's always comes down to, there's not good enough people to find, or, even going a step further as you found the person, they're not the right fit, but people are kind of settling because there's such a shortage of people. And so it's like, sometimes I feel like it's almost a trade-off, and how do you balance that? Because it's like, all right, I really need this person. However, if we don't hire them, we're kind of screwed. So it's like that balance.
Yes. And so I agree. So I think it's a very important point that you make. My philosophy, and the one that I communicate with my clients, is to never settle. And the analogy that I use is one of a sports team. So you have in sports, you have a set schedule that you have to play. You have to show up. You've got to field, however many people you have to field, and you've got to play your schedule. Having said that, you're always evaluating the people who are on your team. And you may frankly say, I've got 5 people who are A players, 4 people who are B players, and 3 people that are C players. And on this job right now, I do have some C players. But what I'm always doing, and this is one of the advantages of a downturn in the economy, is that some companies are going to struggle, and B and A players are going to begin to get sort of released for whatever reason. I'm always looking for those A players that I can bring on board. And I'm always committing to developing the people that I already have to up-level their game as much as possible. So I'm never in the mode where I'm like, man, you just got to get rid of this guy, right? Even if you do need to get rid of him, I understand that you still need to build the projects that you have. And sometimes a warm body is what you need. However, you should never settle, and you should always be looking to upgrade the people in your company so that you have the right people in the right positions.
I think that I actually just talked to somebody the other day, and they told me, Matt, I've got 8 guys on the ground. 3 of them are great, and the rest are just warm bodies. And I thought about it for a second, and I am a strong believer in teaching people. If they're going to be there, they might as well be learning. And I love that you just said that. If they're there, they're not just a useless person. You can have them learning and elevating themselves to where maybe one day they're not a C player, they're a B player. Do you think that in the worst case, I mean, we've been backed up now for a couple of years now. Do you think that that's a good use of time, is even if they're not the best, just train them up?
Well, I think it depends, because there's 2 different dynamics that are going on when someone is an underperformer. Okay, the first question you have to ask is it a matter of their attitude, or is it a matter of their aptitude? So if it's their aptitude, right, their skill, I can train skill. But if it's their attitude, I don't care who it is. If the guy's attitude sucks, he might be the most talented person you have in terms of technical skills. But if his attitude is infecting your crew so that their production is falling, or so that they're not following the guy who's leading, then I can't teach attitude, but I can teach skill. So I'm looking for people who have the right attitude so that they can then be skilled up and they can grow, and C players can become B players and they can become A players.
So Eric, I'm sure you hear this a million times. I don't have time to train people. What do you have to say to the businesses that are operating from that mentality?
Then you're going to continue to have problems.
It's fair. How do you diagnose and like get them to see the value of actually investing into their people?
Yeah, it's a tremendous challenge because I understand that, time is money. And so if I've got my guys out of the field training, that means they're not on the job site making money. But then you have to understand that if that's your mentality, then don't be surprised if you have the same mistakes happening over and over and over again. And so whether it's from a hard skill perspective, a technical skill perspective, or a soft skill perspective, you do have to take time out to train. Then the other perspective is also one where the people who are leading, your foreman, your lead guys, your lead girls, your lead gals, however you want to put it, they have to have the mindset that I'm here to mentor these people as well. So that if I'm here to train them up so that they can run on their own without me having to be there 24/7. And if they have that mentality, that can also help to develop your people as well.
This completely ties into what I'm about to ask you, but I saw one of your YouTube Shorts videos recently where you talk about hiring people for a more technical fit, not for conviction. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that? You kind of just did with the whole leads need to be understanding that they're mentoring these people. Can you get into that a little bit?
Well, when I say conviction, I think it's really important. It goes back to this idea of culture. So the best companies, well, every company has a culture, whether they understand it or not, right?
Absolutely.
Because every person has that. Every company, every person. The best companies understand what their culture is. And so when they are hiring, and again, this is a dynamic, it's not a magic pill. It's a dynamic. When they are hiring, they are aggressive and looking for people who are going to fit that culture. So going back to my client whose purpose is to crush the competition, when they're interviewing people, they're careful to ask them questions around work-life balance, because frankly, at their company, the work-life balance isn't terrific. And so if someone's coming in saying, I'd like some work-life balance, that's an immediate red flag for them, even if they're skilled, even if they have a background in estimating, because if you're not willing to come in at 6:37 in the morning and stick around until 5, this is not the place for you. And if you're always looking to leave by 2:00 because, you've got your kid's ball game to go to or something like that, in some companies, they're encouraging that. But let's be honest up front. If you're going to be cutting out every day to go handle this or go handle that or go handle the other thing, maybe you're not a fit for the organization and we shouldn't hire you in the first place. So having that conviction about who you are and then being willing to attract people based on that and then also repel people based on that conviction can lead to a much healthier culture.
We did this recently and I didn't even understand that we were doing it. But now that you say it that way, it makes perfect sense. We've been through the hiring process a lot as we're scaling. And we've had a few people where they don't work out on Thursdays, Fridays, or the weekend at all. And as much as we try to make that fit, it's like trying to fit a big old triangle into a square. It just does not work. It's not the fit that we need. And as much as I aligned with them as a person, as a carpenter, on a work level, if they can't be there more than half the week, it just doesn't make sense.
Yep.
And it felt like saying hey, kid, you're great, but this isn't going to work, when his work ethic was there, but scheduling, what you just said ties in with that scheduling thing a lot. That makes sense.
Was attitude there too, Matt, or did you learn?
Absolutely, this kid was on fire, but it was a family problem. It was, I have to be out of town every single weekend, Saturday, Sunday, which isn't that big of a deal, but it was, I have something else Thursday, Friday, I can't be there. So that was I have days where the crane shows up and it costs a lot of money. I can't just have people not there.
Yeah, 100%. And so let me just say this. What happens with a lot of, you've got to decide as a company, am I going to spend my life revolving around my employees' drama and issue, or am I going to set a clear course for my business? And of course, people have issues. I remember when I was going through some particular personal challenges, 20 years ago in my life, and my employer stuck with me. But he did that because I was a baller, right? And he knew that Eric's a baller and now he's having a little dip. Let me help out Eric for a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Knowing that Eric's not some sort of flaky dude. And he helped me out for a couple of months as I was going through some challenges, and I continued to ball. So everyone has issues. We all have challenges. We're human beings. But if there's a person who's like you just described, Matt, that's the kind of person, well, dude, I like you. You are skilled, but you're just not a fit.
Man, you're solving my problems during this podcast. I'm thinking about way too much here. Oh, that's great.
So I did kind of have a question out of curiosity, Eric. Given I think we're at a little bit, we can get into this a little bit later in the podcast because the whole reshuffling of the labor pool is something that we had mentioned on 2 of our previous podcasts where the opportunity is a little bit more tangible now. But one of the things that I talk to a lot of businesses and it's quick to hire, not so quick to fire. They're trying to hold on to people because they need warm bodies. And I feel like, let me ask you this instead of assuming, when you talk to a lot of these businesses, they need to fill a seat on the bus. And so maybe they lower their expectation level because they need a warm body on the site. How often do you see that? And two, how do you refine your process and expectation when you are going through the interview process?
Yeah. So the first thing is I see that all the time, and it's with companies that are small, companies that are large. They hire fast and they fire slow instead of hiring slow and firing fast. And so to refine the process of hiring, first step is what we've already touched on, which is to be clear on your culture and inject that into the interview process. Second step, I recommend using assessments. There's tons of different assessments out there. I recommend one with my clients. Assessments are not the be all and end all, but they're a part of the process. And so an assessment where you're assessing how someone thinks, how they behave, what they like to do, and how that fits in with the role that you're hiring them for, particularly if it's a higher level management role and you're going to be paying this person, $150,000 salary and, whatever the case may be. And then the third step is after you're clear on your convictions and you're injecting those into the hiring process, you're using an assessment. The third one is to really check the references and to actually do that and to have clear conversations with people about how does this person succeed? How has this person failed? Why did they leave their job? And this is a key question that I would ask every single reference that I go after. And it's this: if this person was to come back to you and reapply for a job with your company, would you hire them?
Interesting. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah. And I think it's a killer question. It's one that I ask. It's funny because I was talking to one of my clients just last week, and a high-level executive in their company left their company a few months ago, and they began to sort of send back out feelers to this company. And you could kind of tell that maybe this guy was kind of angling for another position. And I looked the guy in the eye, and this is a, $100 million plus construction company. I said, listen, if this guy comes back and he wants a job, are you going to give it to him? And he's like, nah, I'm not going to give it to him. He's done. And so you got to be clear on that kind of stuff, because these issues about hiring and then keeping people who are not a fit for your company, they will cost you millions of dollars over the lifetime of your organization. And you have to get very, very aggressive and very consistent in bringing on the right people and putting them in the right positions in your organization.
That was killer. I love that.
Can I have, Matt, we're probably going to switch gears a little bit and go into some of the office stuff, but just so I can kind of clarify, maybe for the audience too.
Yes.
Eric, when you talk about convictions, is that, gut checking on the person that you're going to hire, or is it overall just having conviction in your own organization, or is it both? Like how do you define convictions when you're talking to a client of yours?
It starts with you first. It's the most important thing is you have to be clear on why does my company exist? How do we behave? How are we going to be successful? What's most important right now? Those are four questions that you have to ask. What's our purpose? What's our personality? What's our plan? What's our priority? With all those things in mind, I should bring those into every single interview that I do as far as hiring people. What's my plan? What's my purpose? What's my personality? What's my priority? With that, and so you have to have that kind of conviction. Then when you're interviewing someone, you have to ask yourself the question, what is it going to cost me to make a hiring mistake here? And this is the key. So let's say you're hiring someone, and maybe you're hiring an hourly worker. And so you bring them onto the job site, you figure out after 2 weeks that they're not a fit, and then you let them go. That doesn't cost you a lot of money.
No.
Okay. And sometimes that's just what you have to do. And that's fine. That's fine. But if you hire someone in a more expensive role, it would be a project manager, an estimator, a senior leader, someone who you're going to be investing 6 figures plus to bring them into the company, you must understand that to make a hiring mistake is going to cost you at least a year's salary in terms of getting rid of that person and then bringing in another person to replace them. So it's a big, big spend. And that's why when you're hiring someone, you really have to ask yourself, is this the right person for the right position? And then once you've hired them, you can't just go, whew, I've done my job, right? No, your job is just beginning. And it's then that you have to commit to making sure that their first 30, 60, 90 days are a tremendous success in your organization. Because what you have to do at the end of 90 days is then take a hard look at this person's contribution and ask yourself, is this the right person for my company? Because if they're not, that's when you need to cut ties with them, is after that 90-day period. Because if you don't have a clear idea of whether or not they're a fit for your company in the first 90 days, then you haven't done your job correctly?
So that's a key question that you should be asking is, when you set that level of expectation is also asking the candidate, where do you expect to be in 90 days? And then making sure those expectations are met. And one thing that, I was having a conversation with a business and you kind of just triggered this memory for me, Eric, but he was saying something along the lines of, I mean, he's about 70 employees today. Really a lot of his growing pains happen around 30 to 40 employees when you really start to need to develop systems and processes. And, just putting more people on a bad system doesn't put out your fires. And, one of the things that he exactly right. But one of the things that he mentioned was you can't just hire people and expect all of your problems to go away. And I feel like I see that a lot, especially with businesses that are maybe getting up close to their scaling phases. They just feel like they need to put bodies on things, and then people are going to come in and then they're just going to figure out what to do. And I feel like if you don't have, like what you're kind of alluding to, the conviction about your business, or at least having, a clear roadmap of what this hire is going to do, they're not going to be successful because they're not going to come in and know your organization better than you do. And you have to put that plan in place and not just be like, hey, we're going to hire John or Sally, and they're going to just, figure out all the processes for us. It just doesn't happen. I think the smartest thing to do is like do all that manually and then figure out like what's the ideal process, and then bring in that operator or whoever. And then, then they're going to execute on that process.
That comes with having systems in place though, and already being somewhat of a leader, because a lot of the people that I'm talking to, they're telling me that nobody treats their business the way that they treat their business. And that's all fine and dandy, but nobody ever is going to. But you can put systems in place and teach them and show them ways to what they're doing is more beneficial than what they were doing before. It just seems like a lot of people hire and expect that like all their problems are just going to go away. Everything's going to be cured. And if you hire somebody for an office position, you're never going to have any problems. I think that's kind of where we're headed to with this next segment here. We see this all the time, conflicts between the field and the office, between say project managers, between GCs and subs. The one I hear most about is the field to office disconnect. Kind of curious your point of view. What are some of the most common conflicts between the two?
I think a lot of the conflicts are these ones, right?
Yeah.
Where they're pointing fingers at each other about who is responsible for what exactly. And so as a leader, what you have to do is you have to be very clear on what the job of the field is and what the job of the office is. So what are you expecting your project manager to accomplish? What are you expecting your foreman and your superintendent to accomplish? What are their roles and responsibilities? Do they understand what their role and responsibility is? Do they understand what the other people's role and responsibility is? And then are they executing it? If you're clear on that, then when you come across the various conflicts, that will help you to understand who's ultimately accountable for that particular issue.
So you're saying that accountability is lacking. Basically, nobody knows who is doing what, and that's where the problems come from. Because I work with a lot of different builders, and anytime a problem comes up, say it's with billing, I talk to people on site. Oh no, that's not my deal. That's theirs. I talk to them. Yeah. Field guys didn't turn in billing. Nothing got submitted. It's always they're blaming them and they're blaming them, and it's just a circle of 9 times out of 10.
Yeah. And again, that's where clarity on role and responsibility is important. And then communication of that role and responsibility so that everyone understands, and then accountability to that role and responsibility. Clarity, communication, accountability.
So I want to chime in here. I've talked to a lot of field guys over the last 2 years, ranging from a lot, ranging anywhere from like journeyman carpenters in the union to, I mean, your everyday, swinging a hammer guy. Most of them do not respect the office.
Yes.
And so I totally get it. If you have processes in place and you have like roles and communication and expectation, but I mean, I'll talk to some of these guys and they're like, this is their words, not mine, but they're like, they don't know what I go through. And
That's
so
right.
It's like, when the fingers go the opposite directions, it's usually out of like just a lack of respect for each other's role. HR or office management, the most common thing that I'll hear from guys or gals on the field is they're like, they've never stepped on a job site. So like, why am I going to try to improve my communication if they have no idea what I have to go through to even get this data or whatever to them?
We hear the same pushback with engineers and architects though, as well, with the trades too. It's still that field to office setting, because I've heard it a million times. It looks great on paper, but does it work? No. And it's the same thing every time. And it comes down to, in my opinion, a lack of respect both ways. They don't care so much. Like, I've seen gray areas where the architect just leaves things blank. And then I've also seen guys on site that aren't willing to communicate. So it kind of goes both ways. Who's at fault though?
Okay, so I think the first thing that everyone needs to do is they need to step back and they need to ask the question, where do we make our money, right? In construction, where's the money made? And the way I look at it, the money's made in the field.
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't have guys and gals in the field, building the buildings, doing the work, then you ain't going to make any money. And so the folks who are in the office, they need to understand that they're there to support the field. They're there to make sure that the field has everything that they need to execute every single day. The field needs to understand that as the office is providing them the support that they need to execute, and that they are the center of the business, they're the engine of the business, they then have a responsibility to report back to the office with the information that the office needs in order to help the field to execute at the highest possible level on a consistent basis. And so if that's the mindset that we're making our money in the field, and field, you have the responsibility to report back on your production and on your issues so that we can understand what we need to do to further support you, then that mindset shift can help to overcome some of the barriers.
Question for you. Do you think a lot of contractors are telling their field employees that they need to be reporting back? Because oftentimes I hear that the office needs to be telling field what they need to be doing, but it's never really the other way around. What you just said right now was actually kind of a first, and I think it's something that would help a lot. So are you working with people that are having their teams communicate both ways?
Absolutely. And that's what the most effective companies do. And they use a combination of relationships and technology to achieve this. And again, that perspective, the field is where we make our money. So we're here to support you, but field, we need information from you so that we can better support you. And another piece of that of the process is this. I work with a lot of larger contractors, and what happens is they hire their engineers or project managers out of college, and they have their degrees, and everybody knows that they don't know anything except them sometimes, the guys with the degrees. They think the degree qualifies them to go onto a project and tell a guy who's been doing the work for 25, 30 years, what they need to do. And so the office needs to come onto it's a tricky thing. They need to come onto the job site with the appropriate combination of humility and assertiveness. Okay. Because what happens is sometimes guys come onto the job site with their degrees and think that they're the bomb, and they're really not. But then on the other hand, they come on and they naturally get intimidated by the guys on the job site who are like, screw you, buddy. I'm not going to give you the information you need. You need to earn it. And so there's a tricky thing there. They need to come on and be willing to assert themselves appropriately, but then also show the appropriate humility so that they can build relationships with people and really overcome those silos that exist between the field and the office.
That comes with being able to humble yourself, being able to you kind of have to take yourself down off that high horse and create like a mutual respect between them.
Yeah. And that takes work. It takes relationship building. It takes going through conflicts, and it's a challenging thing. What we're talking about, there's no magic pills to what we're talking about here, right? It's not like, here's the magic pill, take it. If anyone sells you magic pills when it comes to this stuff, then they're full of it, right?
I wanted to chime on the relationship component, Eric, because I 100% hear you. I mean, you were kind of alluding to the project manager that has the degree, and then you have the industry veteran that's like, earn the information.
That's right.
We also had this was a little bit ago. We had a podcast episode with Jared Kaufman. If anybody's listening and wants to learn about the dynamics between younger leaders and leading veterans, I highly recommend going and checking that out. But the dynamic is the same. The project manager is getting information from the field veterans, but also maybe let's quickly talk on the younger leaders coming in. Because that's a big gap too. You have the industry veteran that has 20, 30 years of experience, but then also if you have like that lead carpenter or that whatever it is, that dynamic is really tricky too. Because then it's like, now I'm taking orders from this 28-year-old. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah. So I think that it's incumbent upon the younger folks to come with a mindset of, I am in a leadership role, but I'm here to serve you. I'm here to do whatever is necessary to clear the way so that you guys can build safely, profitably, with high quality on a consistent basis. Now, if I need to say stuff, I'm going to say stuff, right? If I need to call you out, I'm going to call you out. But I'm not doing it because I'm trying to power trip. I'm not doing it because I'm trying to clown you. I respect you. I know that you're the heartbeat of the business, but I will lead, but I will serve as well and do whatever is necessary to make sure that you can get your job done.
One thing that I do want to say right here is that if anyone is listening, dealing with this type of dynamic, they should literally copy and paste this script from Eric and tell this to their field guys, because I mean, you scripted it better than probably any of us could have right now. And
I do think it's important as well. So like a lot of construction companies, the guys who run them, the owners and the presidents, they come out of the field, so they understand the gig, right? They started with their like my framing company, LB Construction. Jordy and Vance started the company with one truck and their belts on, right? So these guys aren't, Harvard MBAs who just swooped in and bought a construction company. You know what I'm saying? So they know what the field goes through, but they also know what the office needs. And so when you have a leader who has that understanding, it's his or her job to make sure that they are getting the field and the office together and saying, guys, these are the rules of the game that we play. Now you all need to play this game together correctly according to the rules. And then make sure that they're holding the leaders of the office and the field, the operations and the project management accountable for playing according to the rules that they establish.
I'm wondering if this is just like a case by case thing, but is this everybody, or how often are you seeing conflicts? Is this something that nearly every construction company you're dealing with deals? Like, do they all have problems with conflict amongst their own employees?
Yes.
Almost all of them, or all of them?
I would say all of them to one degree or another, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not unusual. So don't feel that you're out of unusual if there's conflicts between the field and the office. They're just there.
Yeah.
Okay. The key is making sure that you're doing whatever you can to overcome those conflicts and to minimize those conflicts.
I said it in the beginning that you were kind of making me think about everything that's going on with our own business here. Let's say I had somebody that I consider to be like top performing, love the guy to death, but he has a conflict, and it's not something that's going to be cured. It's a constant thing. It does not change. Maybe it's a character flaw.
Right.
Do you fire? I mean, in my opinion, being completely honest with you, I do not think this is something that can change, but it doesn't, you're like my therapist right now. I'm sorry. It doesn't affect other employees. It affects management.
Okay. So then you have to ask, is management willing to deal with it?
That's a good question. I would answer yes.
Okay.
So when is it yes and when is it no?
Are you asking me or are you asking Matt?
Yeah, I'm asking the therapist right now. Okay. Eric.
The answer is I don't know. I don't know. So it's a case by case basis, right? So another way of putting it, Matt, is what's this costing you in terms of emotions and money, right?
To me, it's more of like and I don't want to put anybody on blast here. I don't even know if they listen to the damn podcast. To me, it's more of I care about every single person that works for us. I would go to bat for any of them any day, but I don't want to think about your problems, whether they be large. If there's family problems, people just bounce. I'm all for that. I love family, but it's little stupid things. I don't want to stress on your problems is my big thing. Am I wrong for thinking that?
Okay, so here's a question. This is what the question that I ask my clients when they're dealing with an individual who's talented but troubled or troubling. Matt, if this person walked into your office today and said, I'm moving, or I have an opportunity with another company down the street and I'm going to take that opportunity, what would you do?
That's a good question. Chances are fight a little bit to keep, but not necessarily like this is going to make or break anything.
Okay, so then there's your answer. But it's interesting. You said fight a little bit to keep. Why would you fight a little bit to keep?
Because I know the value that they do provide is worth something.
Okay, so then you have to ask yourself the question, is the value that they're providing sufficient to put up with the BS?
So far, yes. I just wanted your opinion to see am I stupid for doing this? Like, that makes a lot more sense though. I'm gonna think of it that way from now on, and maybe judge over the next 90 days.
Right. And if you ever get to the point where the answer to that question is, hey, it's been great having you, have a nice day, that's when you need to let them go.
Okay.
I
feel like I'm in a therapy session. I love this. Thank you so much.
This is good. We're getting into it. I want to talk a little bit more about like how to facilitate those conversations and like conflict resolution. So maybe I'll just tee it up a little bit, but let's talk about how to have the difficult conversations in an organization, kind of like what Matt was going to bridge into here. But one of the things that it's just been like pounded in my head is how you start a conversation is typically how it will end. I picked this up from Dr. John Gottman, who's an amazing psychologist. A lot of his work is just around how to make relationships work. And what he specifically said, and I'm quoting him a little bit loosely here, but I think he was like 90 something% of the time you can predict an outcome of a conversation based on how it starts within the first couple of minutes. So
Mm.
my question to you, Eric, is in such a fast-paced, stressful environment like construction, and I think there's definitely some uniqueness in construction versus other industries, but specifically for the environment of construction, what do you think is the best way to handle those disagreements and conflicts as they come up when you got 10,000 balls in the air that you're trying to juggle?
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to do is you do have to set aside time to have that individual one-on-one conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're having an individual confrontation, you need to get right to the point. And so there's a model that I use that I learned from Susan Scott and her book, Fierce Conversations. And it's a model that I teach consistently. And what it does is it helps you to get into a one-on-one confrontation with someone very quickly. So the first thing you have to do is you have to name the issue. Okay. So let's say the issue is a lack of urgency and a lack of planning. Okay. That's the issue that someone has. So it's a project manager. You're not planning the work correctly, and you have a lack of urgency in terms of dealing with issues. Then after you name the issue, you select a specific example that illustrates the behavior or situation you want to change. So you never go with, you always do this or you never do that. You never do that, right? You always name the issue and then give a specific example. So yesterday with this particular project, it took you the crew 14 hours to put down 400 tons of concrete, and it shouldn't take that long. So this is the issue. Here's a specific example of it. Then you describe your emotions about the situation. You say, listen, I'm frustrated as a result of this issue because it has an impact on the financial health of the company and the relationships with the client. Then you clarify what's at stake. Now, this is very important in the confrontation, because if you're my boss and you're coming to me, the first thing I'm asking is, what's at stake here? Is this my job? Is this my position? Is this just a reprimand? What's at stake? So if his job or her job is at stake, you need to say that right up front. Okay. Then what you do is, if you identify your contribution to the problem, if you've contributed to the problem in some way. So for instance, maybe I might say in this situation, you're not very good at planning, and I have to say that I haven't been good enough at teaching you how to plan. Okay. So if you've contributed to the problem, you need to say that, because you know what it's like when someone comes to you and starts confronting you. The first thing that you're doing in your head is you're saying, yeah, right. This is happening because you haven't done X, Y, and Z. So if there is an X, Y, and Z there, you need to say that. Then you indicate your wish to resolve the problem. Because if you're having a confrontation that isn't, I'm firing you right now, that means you do wish to resolve the problem. And you need to let people know that. And then after that, you invite your partner to respond, right? So you name the issue, you select a specific example, describe your emotions, clarify what's at stake, identify your contribution to the problem, indicate your wish to resolve it, and then invite your partner to respond. And you should do that in 60 seconds. Seriously, you got to prep though. If you prep that, you can do that in 60 seconds. So I can say, Dave, I'm concerned with your lack of urgency. Yeah, I'm concerned with your lack of urgency on this project. Yesterday in, Atascadero, where you're from, Matt, on this particular project, you didn't kick ass there. And as a result of that, that's causing me great frustration, and it's impacting our relationship with the client. If this doesn't get fixed, I'm sorry, but your job's at stake. This is key. You've got to nail this. I know I haven't given you enough training. I'm committed to giving you that training, and I want to resolve this issue. Can you give me your perspective on what's going on? So I did that in about 60 seconds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So I'm kind of curious then, what's your framework for handling those disagreements then?
I have a slightly different framework, Breck, and the one that I use is disagree but commit. So if we're in a meeting and we're talking about how we're going to run this project, and let's say I bring in my project manager, I bring in my superintendent, I bring in my foreman, let's say I'm the chief of operations, and we're talking about how we're going to run this project. We're going through a handoff process. You might even have the estimator in there, and you're talking about how you're going to execute. And one guy has one opinion and another gal has another opinion, and you're talking about that, and there's some conflict there or disagreement. You allow that disagreement, but then at the end of the disagreement, someone's going to have to, at the end of the meeting, someone's going to have to make a call as to how we're going to execute this. And so at that point, even though there's disagreement, you've had a chance to give your feedback. Now let's commit to this course of action, knowing of course that, we can always come back and revisit the course of action if it turns out to be the incorrect one.
I figured that would be somewhat along the lines of your framework. I want to talk a little bit more about if people are the root problem and also the root solution.
Yes.
Obviously changes to a project are part of the game. How do you motivate people when they're struggling?
It depends what area they're struggling in. Give me an example.
Maybe just executing a project. I mean, one of the things that we kind of already talked about in the episode is maybe the resistance of properly collecting data from the field or the field submitting that data.
Yes.
And so if they're not motivated to do that, which enables an organization to run effectively, let's just diagnose that as a struggle to an organization on either side. How do you motivate people when they're struggling?
Again, I think it goes partly back to the idea of role and responsibility. So I have to diagnose the problem. So if someone's struggling, if they're demotivated, are they demotivated because the people that they're working with are not responding to their requests for information? If that's the case, I might need to get the field and the office together and say, listen, guys, if we're going to be able to execute this project profitably, field, you have a responsibility. Office, you have a responsibility. Now, both of you need to execute that responsibility. And again, it goes back to me holding them accountable, their manager holding them accountable for that.
So ultimately, you're hosting an intervention to see what in the hell's going wrong and where. And at that point,
sometimes you got to do interventions. Yeah, you got to figure it out, right?
Leave nothing unturned and basically talk through everything.
Yes. Yeah. And again, that's why having those regular meetings, those regular project meetings once a week where you're bringing in people and you're saying, what's the progress on the project? You're bringing in the project manager and hopefully someone from the field so the field can get their hand raised and bring in their issues. That'll help you to keep these projects on track.
I think that communication as a whole, it's something we've talked about way too much. Communication as a whole in construction sucks.
Right.
I've worked with too many people, and no matter how big they are, whether they're turning 50 million, 100 million a year, they all have the same issue that nobody seems to talk.
Absolutely. And so you have to insist on that and you have to work really hard on it. And it's never ending. So that's why you have to get into habits of communication that are based on commitments in terms of what's my daily rhythm of communication? What's my weekly rhythm of communication? What's my monthly rhythm of communication? And it may vary from project to project, from situation to situation, but you have to get into a consistent routine. And then you just have to get into that habit where you're holding yourself and other people accountable for that consistent communication.
So we're on the topics of meetings, Eric. Two things, obviously, that you seem to be very proficient at is understanding and also coaching your clients on how to run a kick-ass meeting, but also shifting from time management to calendar management, which we'll get into. But first, let's talk about, I like your whole kind of like kick-ass meeting type of phrasing. But first, like, one, how do you identify a kick-ass meeting in terms of your definition? Yes. But also, what would be the ideal outcome of a kick-ass meeting? How do you typically structure one?
And that's a great question. So a kick-ass meeting is one where we have identified a specific problem. We have the right people in the room to address the problem. And we're using a very simple but powerful structure to go from problem identification to idea generation to idea prioritization and then action planning. And we're doing that in 60 minutes or less. And you see, the issue with a lot of people is they try and solve problems, and the leader either thinks one of two things. One, either I suck at running meetings, or my team sucks and they never want to come to agreements. They're just butting heads all the time. And the problem isn't that you suck at running meetings or that your team sucks. It's the structure of the meeting that's the problem. And so if you have the right structure, you can learn how to facilitate the meeting and get people to come to agreement on how you're going to solve your issues. So let me just explain that in a little bit of detail, if I may. So the first thing you need to do is to identify the problem. So let's say you have a safety issue on your projects. Your incident rate is not where you want it to be, and you want to address safety. So you bring in people from the field, the office, your safety person, whatever the case is, and you ask the question, in what specific ways can we improve safety on our job sites in the next 90 days? Okay, so you have a clear question right there. And the key word in that question is the word specific. And the reason why is because the more specific you are in your thinking, the more actionable you will be in the ideas that you produce. Okay, so you bring people into the room, and let's say you have a room with 7 or 8 people. For this type of meeting where you're looking to solve problems, I wouldn't have more than 7 or 8 people, maybe 9 at the most, because if you get too many people in, it's just too difficult to run. Okay. So you get the key people in there, and then you give them 2 minutes just to write as many ideas as they can come up with in 2 minutes to that question. In what specific ways can we improve safety in the next 90 days? And in this process, at this point of the meeting, there's no bad ideas. Whatever idea you have, you write it down, you get another one, you write it down, you get another one. You're just trying to be as specific as possible and dump as much as you can in 2 minutes. Then you ask everyone to look at the list of ideas that they've generated and pick their top 2 ideas. Okay. So they've probably generated anywhere from 2 to 6 ideas in 2 minutes, maybe more for some people. Even if they've generated only one idea, that's fine. You ask them to pick their top 2. Then you go around the room, and let's say you're in a room and you have a whiteboard or you have a flip chart. Even if you're out in the field, you might have a little iPad or something like that where you can make notes. You go around the room and you gather one idea at a time from each person. So you start and you get your first idea. They share it with you. You write it down on the board. You ask clarifying questions because sometimes people need to talk out their ideas to clarify what they're saying. And then you go to the next person and get their idea, and you only let them share one idea at a time. You go all the way around the room getting their ideas. If you're going to participate and you're leading the meeting, you share your first idea last, okay? Then you go back around the room and get everyone's ideas, but you go the other way. So the person who went last gets to go first the second time around. So you should get 2 ideas from every person in the room. Now, you're going to get duplicate ideas at some point. That's fine. You just ask them to share their next best idea. So at the end of that, you should have about 12 to 15 ideas on the board on how you're going to improve safety in the next 90 days. Now, there's an old saying about meetings: when all was said and done, a lot was said and nothing was done. So you've got this list of ideas, and they're probably all really good ideas, but you're not going to execute on all of them in the next 90 days. You're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So what you do then is you prioritize, and this is how you prioritize. Let's say you have 12 ideas on the board. You distribute 4 votes to every person in the room. So a third of the ideas, and you ask them to pick their top 4 ideas from the list of 12. Okay. And so everyone votes, you go around the room, you collect the votes. And what you'll find is that 1 or 2 ideas will get more votes than all of the other ones. And in fact, what you might find in many cases, and I've been using this process for almost 2 decades, it'll be 2 decades next year. You'll find that the top 2 ideas will then be supported by the other ideas that get votes. Okay. So then what you do is you take the idea that has the most votes. And so let's say it's safe, and the best idea is we're going to have a tailgate meeting every single day for 5 minutes. We're going to have a 5 to 10 minute tailgate meeting on every single project, every single day, to remind us about safety. And let's say there's 8 people in the room, and that got 6 votes, and that's the most votes. So you look at everyone in the room and you say, by a show of hands, if we commit in the next 90 days to having a tailgate meeting every single day to discuss safety, how many people will support that by a show of hands? And I promise you, 99% of the time, you're going to get unanimous consent to that idea. And the only time you don't get unanimous consent if someone is unclear on the idea for whatever reason. So by using this process, you get everyone to weigh in with their ideas, to evaluate the ideas, to vote on the ideas, and then to support the ideas, and to come to agreement on how you're going to solve your toughest challenges. And you can do this in less than an hour.
This is going to sound so ridiculous, but like what you've just explained sounds amazing, for one. But 2, this sounds like something I would do in grade school because it works. But the other thing is, it's so simple that it works so well. You're not just telling people how you're going to fix a problem, and you're not giving them any sort of like, here's A, B, or C. Here's what you're doing. That's going to be that. That's how you get pushback. But like you're saying, when you get their opinions on what they think could be done, and they feel like they came together as a group and figured something out, I feel like that leaves everybody leaves the room thinking, I contributed to that. Like we're going to make a change, and I was part of that. And I feel like they're more entitled to want to actually push for that. That makes so much freaking sense.
Yep. 100%. I promise you, if you use this process, you will find that it revolutionizes the way that you run the types of meetings where you're looking to solve problems. And we know in construction, problems happen all the time.
Absolutely.
And so you've got to get good at solving problems and tapping into the genius of your team in order to do that.
I love that. I'm gonna recap for the audience, but the 4 ways to run a successful meeting, according to Eric, is identify the problem, share ideas, and vote. Prioritize them, evaluation, and come to an agreement.
Yep.
That's amazing. It's simple, and there's an agenda, and like what Matt was alluding to, everybody feels like they contributed to it.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I've built my whole business on that one framework. I mean, my business is way more than just that, but without that, I wouldn't have the business that I have now, and the ability to help the people that I've helped because of using that process.
So I want to talk about the second thing that I was alluding to is the changing from the time management to calendar management, speaking of processes. But can you identify or tell us a little bit more about like how you view both of them, time management versus calendar management, and like how to factor in and embrace chaos? Because I think that's really, really important for a lot of folks in construction to learn more about.
So it's basically a mindset shift. And again, this is nothing, this is not rocket science by any means, but basically if you're trying to manage your time in construction, you'll fail miserably because there is so much chaos, right? So I'm coming in and I've got my prioritized list of stuff I'm going to do that day. And then all of a sudden I get a call from my superintendent or my foreman, and that goes out the window and off I go. You know what I'm saying? And then I come to the end of my day and my list is, I haven't done anything on my list, and I wondered what happened. And so the first thing you have to do is you have to embrace chaos and realize that much of time, especially as you're lower down in an organization, and maybe I shouldn't say lower down, the closer you are to the field, the more chaos there will be in your life. Okay. So the further you get away from the field, the less chaos there will be. Okay. Or the higher you get up in leadership. Now, you have to embrace that chaos. And let's say you're a project manager. 80% of your time is going to be spent dealing with stuff, right? Answering emails, contacting clients, coordinating with the field, running around with your hair on fire. Get used to it. That's reality. Okay. Where it comes to calendar management, what you have to do is you have to ask, when does my chaos occur? What are the times that my chaos occurs, generally speaking? And so maybe I've got to get my guys lined up and get them launched at 7 o'clock in the morning. And, from 7 to 10, lots of stuff is happening. And then maybe it mellows out a little bit in the afternoon. Okay. Now, I may still get a few phone calls, but there's space in the afternoon where what I can do then is shift to my calendar management mindset. And I'm going to set out blocks of time. There's going to be a time block. And it could be a time block for anything. It could be a time block for, let's say I'm an estimator and a project manager. I do both. Well, I'm going to block out time in my calendar in the afternoon to work on an estimate. And for 90 minutes, I'm not going to take phone calls. I'm not going to take emails. I'm going to focus on one thing. I'm not going to multitask because multitasking doesn't work. I'm going to do one thing, and that is work on that estimate. So prior to getting into that time block, in order for it not to be interrupted, I'm going to communicate to other people saying, hey, listen, from 1 to 2:30, I'm going to be working on an estimate unless there is an emergency. And let me define what an emergency means. Unless there is an emergency, my door is closed. I will not be interrupted. After that time block, I'm happy to answer your emails or your phone calls or to have a conversation with you. But during that time block, I'm managing my calendar and I'm focused on doing one thing.
I've said it a few times that I think that you're my therapist right about now. I really do think that I'm on almost a right path. I started doing this recently because I noticed that time went out the window in a hurry and that I couldn't get to anything that I wanted to during the day. So I got to a point where I would start putting the phone away, not having emails open, and just focusing on, I wasn't doing it so much as like a scheduled thing. And we also don't have a huge company, but I'm able to just put everything away and work on one thing. And that way, that one thing actually gets done because I was noticing it over and over that I would say I was going to get to it, but it just wouldn't happen.
Yep.
It happened way too many times.
Yep. And so that's where, and so this is the key, right? So like Mondays for me, I don't have client meetings on a Monday. Okay. I just don't do it. So if someone asks me, Eric, can you meet with me on a Monday? I'll say, no, I can't. I'm busy. The only exception I'll make with that is, let's say I'm going on a long vacation and I won't be around for a while. I may open up my Mondays for a week just so that I can meet my clients' needs. But I just don't do that. I do other stuff on Mondays, stuff based around my business. Yeah. And so I think it's really important for you to understand what time blocking means for you and what you need to do in those time blocks, and then discipline yourself to set that time aside, put down the crack pipe, right? This is the crack pipe. Put the crack
He's holding up the phone. He's holding up the phone for people on audio.
Put the crack pipe down. Okay. Communicate to everyone that this is what I'm doing. and then discipline yourself to do that one thing.
Yeah.
It's helped me a lot. It really has. The next thing that I want to talk about is something that I've noticed as well. So I'm hoping we're not going to get into the family problems that I have, but business we've done great. Let's switch gears a bit and talk about building systems and running things a bit more profitable. You talk about this a lot in your new book, but let's get insights. I've seen it myself with many projects that I've ran, but as the project goes on, the profit seems to fade. It just dissipates into nowheresville, and I can't find it if I tried. What's happening?
Most of the time, what's happening, this is one thing that really, this happens a lot, is it's the shiny new thing syndrome. And this is what construction companies do, is they'll have a crew working on a project or a project manager working on a project, and they get right to the like 85 or 90% completion, right? And then all of a sudden, another project comes along. And so, you know what we do, right? We start shifting resources to the new project. We want to get everything kicked off nicely. And then this other project, it just hangs around, right? We try and juggle our balls in the air and all this kind of stuff. It hangs around. The punch list is out there. It never gets completed. And as a result of that, my profit fades away. So it's really challenging, right? Because the truth is I need to bring on this next project in order to keep, the cash coming in and keep the company rolling over. But at the same time, and this is one of the keys, I think, is what companies will do is they will designate one person or one crew, and depends on the size of the company, who's like the project closeout expert, the person who really does a good job of saying, punch list, give me that punch list. I'm going to knock those things out. And let me just go down and make sure all those things get taken care of. And maybe they have enough of energy and enough ability to be able to handle that punch list so that you can shift resources off, but you're focused on buttoning up that last 15% of activity so that profit isn't fading away because you're not finishing up on time.
I have a guy, his name's Jay. He's great. And what you just described is him. He is like, he's also our lead, but he's the most like team player person you've ever met. And if he asks me all the time, Junior, my pop's business, we have the same name, so he calls me Junior. He asks me all the time, Junior, is there anything that you guys need taken care of to where we can move on? And we're on a separate project, and he's asking me about other stuff, like what can we wrap up to take it off your plate? And what you just described is him to a T. And that right there saves my ass more times than not, because I can't do everything.
Yes. Yep. So that is one strategy that I would encourage you to think about, is getting that project closeout expert or team, someone who loves doing that kind of stuff, and bang out that punch list so stuff isn't hanging around costing you money.
Yeah, I love that. Now,
the closer.
Now that you've put that together, like you kind of just pieced together a puzzle in my head. I'll think about that more from now on.
That's someone you'll fight for.
Oh, don't say that. Now you're making me feel bad.
No, not at all, man. That's a good person to have. Eric, we were chatting a couple of weeks ago when we were going to tee up this podcast, but one of the questions that I had asked you, and I really want you to share with everybody listening today, is I asked you, when people call you for advice, what are they usually asking? And you mentioned two things, and I thought it was great. The first one was when a leader of a company was just promoted. And the second thing that you said was how to turn a project leader into a people leader. I want to talk about the first one first. So when a leader of a company was just promoted, talk to us a little bit more about what this conversation looks like and what types of advice are they looking for, or you tend to give when someone was just promoted?
Yeah. So when someone is just promoted, the first 90 days are absolutely essential. So in that first 90 days, what I would do is I would sit down with that person and I would walk them through what I call the high performance dashboard. And I would ask them, as they're coming into this position, what do you think is the one thing that you need to achieve in the first 90 days to be able to say with any credibility, I'm getting off to a good start? And it'll be really interesting to see what they have to say, because, if you've promoted this person into a new position, hopefully they have some talent, they have some capability, and they have some brains, and they would have a good answer to that question. Now, perhaps they wouldn't have a great answer, and you can help to clarify with them what that rally cry or that one thing should be. And then once they've clarified that, then you ask them, okay, so if this is the one thing that you need to achieve in the first 90 days, What are your top 3 initiatives that are going to help you to achieve that rally cry? What are the actual things that you're going to do? Have them identify those 3 things. Make sure that you're aligned with them on that. Give them feedback. Get some metrics that are related to those initiatives that tell you whether or not they're executing on them in order to achieve that rally cry. Once you have that in place, then ask them, okay, in the first 90 days, what are the key relationships that you think you need to develop? So let's say if someone's coming into a project executive role, and this happens, I tell you, this happens many times in construction companies. Let's say they were picked over somebody else, and that somebody else is going to report to them.
They do not like that. I just saw that happen recently.
Yeah. So that is one of the key relationships. Now, relationships are two-way streets, right? So you can do whatever you can to try and build a relationship with someone, but if they don't want a relationship with you, then it ain't going to happen. But having said that, you should make a commitment to developing a relationship with that person, doing everything in your power to do that.
I have a question. Do you think it would be better as a company to not publicize the fact that somebody's going to get promoted, yet do it like one-on-one with that person? Because oftentimes in the example I'm using right now, just recently, they're a big company here in California. It was like game of who's going to be the next boss. And there was like 7 people I'm talking to. That's going to be me. And all 6 of them were very bummed out when the 7th one got it. And all of them had some sort of resentment towards that 7th, all because of the fact that it was publicized of one of you.
Okay. So let me answer that in a couple of ways. Sometimes it's unavoidable because you have to publicly post these positions in larger companies, right? So you publicly post it and then people apply. And of course the grapevine, works and people know who's applying.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of hard to avoid it some of the time.
That makes sense on a big, I guess I was thinking more from a smaller perspective. That makes sense on a big scale.
Yeah. From a small scale, I mean, you can probably manage it a little more effectively, but this is one of the challenges with having a company and having limited spots for people to move up into is that sometimes people are going to have, they're going to be offended that they weren't the ones picked. And you do risk losing them. You do risk them having resentment. And that's something that you just have to manage. That's a reality of business.
That makes sense. I have a lead position opening soon, and I know a couple people that are qualified for it, and I know who's going to get it eventually. So I kind of get that, like, even though it's not being publicized, everybody kind of knows that it's up for grabs. So that makes more sense.
And so that also begs a question about how is it that I can keep my talent over a long period of time? Because I don't have spots for everyone in leadership at the moment, let's say. But how can I grow my company? Or how can I give people other opportunities? Like I work with this one company, they're very large, and they purposely open up new divisions so that they can reposition talented people in those new divisions so that they don't, go to the competition. It's one of the reasons they grow their businesses so that they can make room for the talent they have in their company.
So rather than losing them, they give them a place to go.
Yes, exactly. But that's not all. That's not an option for everyone. But that is what I would call a strategic driver. A driver of a strategic plan could be, we have talented people and we want to make room for them. So let's open up another geography or another project segment that we go after or something like that.
That's sort of the position that I'm in right now because I have very talented lead, love the guy to death. And I also have another one that just came from one of our competitors. So I'm trying not to have him work directly. They're side by side. They should be at least. So we're trying to figure out how to move things around to make it work.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. So once they've identified those key relationships, and they can be external, internal, let's say, you've got a customer relationship that you need to shore up. Well, you tell them in the first 90 days, dude, you need to go out and take this guy out for lunch, or take him golfing, whatever the case is, make sure you shore up that relationship. And then after the key relationships, you then ask them the top development opportunities. What do you need to do in the first 90 days to develop yourself? What help do you need? What resources, what support in order to be able to perform at a high level in your position? So get a rally cry, initiative, metrics, key relationships, top development opportunities, get a dashboard in the right up front, and then in the first 90 days, and I know some people aren't going to like this, but you need to meet with that new person every week with the dashboard in hand and ask them, how's it going? What's working? What's not working? What help do you need? So that you can come to the end of 90 days and say, I did everything I could to make sure this person succeeds in their new role. And then after 90 days, you just redo the dashboard, and you use that on a consistent basis to help people to be focused in on how to perform at a high level.
So I have the follow-up question now. Eric. The second part was turning a project leader into a people leader.
Yes.
And I could probably make some assumptions, but we don't have podcast guests on and us making assumptions. So I want to ask you outright, but what's the biggest difference that you see in a project leader and a people leader? And then how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah. So projects are black and white, generally speaking, with the exception of some of the drawings being a little bit gray, but people are gray, right? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? People are gray though, right? So people aren't black and white. So a lot of times you get engineers who have an engineer's mindset who kick ass running a project, but then when they have to run a team of people, they communicate in a way that is can be abrupt. It can be emotionally unintelligent, and I don't mean being a sissy or something like that, but they just don't pick up on emotional cues sometimes, and so they need to be educated in how to communicate, how to handle people issues, and how they differ from projects. And so that shift can be really challenging. So they have to learn how to have those difficult conversations like we talked about earlier. They have to learn how to bring people to agreement like we talked about earlier in a meeting, not just say, hey, I know the right way to do it because I've got experience. This is how we're going to do it. But like you guys picked up from the process I shared, the act of getting people's input will get their energy then focused in on how to solve the issues. And then you really have to focus them in on making sure that they're holding people accountable. Because when I've only got 1 or 2 people to hold accountable, maybe I can handle that. But if I've got 6 or 8 people to hold accountable, I need to be then consistent in meeting with them on a regular basis so that I can surface issues, I can deal with problems, and I can keep my team moving forward together.
And if not, that's how things fall in the cracks and get left behind.
Yes. And so this is another thing, right? Is because it's challenging because people they didn't get into construction to lead a team of people. They got into construction to build stuff, right? Yeah. And so now they've got to shift their mindset, and they think, this is the problem, they think that they're wasting time having one-on-one meetings with their people, but they're not. They're actually leveraging themselves to deal with the issues that they're having on the projects. And if you run those one-on-one meetings effectively, it'll have a massive positive impact on the business, but you have to discipline yourself to do those on a consistent basis.
That's well said. Eric, we got one more thing that we want to talk about before we go, and talking about your book as well, but we've had two to three episodes where we got some perspective from a couple of our podcast guests on, how to handle a recession, how to find your mentors in terms of just when things are chaotic. And also we got some really good insights to the market with John Burns. One thing that you mentioned is talented people are your best asset no matter what the economy is doing. Yes. I think we can all 110% agree on that.
Yes.
And I couldn't agree more with this. When the economy shakes or crashes, the labor pool reshuffles. We've kind of you alluded to this earlier in the podcast on the opportunity where if you can grab that talent, that's an opportunity that doesn't come every single day. But when hits the fan as a business, how do you coach leaders and business owners on how to maintain a level of conviction in their business and in their projects that enable them to attract that talent and the best people when everybody else is stumbling over themselves and repelling the best people? How do you coach them on handling that?
I think you have to be grounded in your own personal convictions, and you have to be committed to playing long-term games with long-term people. Because construction is a relationship game, and you may get away burning a couple of people and being a hard ass and all this kind of stuff. But the best contractors that I know, particularly in the culture that we're currently living in, the most successful ones are the ones who understand that relationships are at a premium. And I am committed to playing long-term games with long-term people. So I'm going to conduct myself with integrity. I'm going to stand for what's right for the contract that we've agreed to, while also being flexible where I need to be flexible. But I am not I'm not a fly-by-night kind of person where I just build a project and, the economy goes south, and so therefore I'm going to go try something else. I'm long-term committed to construction. I'm long-term committed to my clients. I'm long-term committed to my community. And just having that mindset, I'm playing long-term games with long-term people. The economy is going to go up and down. 2008 happened, almost 10 years ago now. Actually, no, more than 10 years. Sorry, my math's terrible.
15 years ago now.
15 years ago,
crap.
right? So I remember that, right? And everyone freaked out, and it was really, really challenging. But you know what, man? I got clients who've been around for over 100 years. And the reason they've been around for 100 years is because they treat their people right. They work with integrity. and they are committed. They play long-term games with long-term people.
We've touched on this a bit before with some others, but it's almost like I feel like too many people hire without giving people a vision of what could be working for them. And oftentimes it's, here's how much you're going to make. Do you want to start tomorrow? Rather than here's where you could be. I'm serious, dude. Construction's like
I
that.
hear.
And I've hired a lot of
man.
people like that too, but like I really enjoy having a team that knows where we're headed, what we're doing, and where they could be.
Yep.
And a lot of the people right now, I'm hearing it. We're in a small area. I'm hearing a lot of local journeyman carpenters saying, "Hey, you know, how are you looking right about now? Like we're getting slow over here." And their boss, their leader is not telling them, "Hey, you know, don't worry about that. We're good." Whereas, like personally, not to sound cocky, I'm telling our guys, "Don't stress on that. We've got it covered. We're booked out solid. Like we're going to keep working no matter what. We have a downturn right now. People are getting slow, but that's not something they have to worry about because they see that long term of we're not going to be gone next May. If I'm gone next May, I effed up."
Yep. That's right. That's right. And so that's the thing, dude, is like, so this is I was back in the day, I used to sell copy machines, right? This was back in the 90s, right? And
I love this.
I know it's classic. I used to do tons of cold calls, right? And man, I made, dude, anyway. But one day I walked into this one office and there was this guy, and, you know, I don't know, I'm in my 50s now. So he's probably like my age at the time. And I was in my 20s or whatever. And I asked him, so, hey, I don't know why I asked him. I said, hey, give me some advice. And he said, okay, so let me give you some advice. Low overhead, stay humble. It's not what you make, it's what you keep.
Oh.
Now, if you want to get through a recession, that's how you're going to get through it. Low overhead, stay humble. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. And if you run your business like that every single day, particularly construction, then when the recessions hit, when the bad times hit, you'll have the cash in hand to be able to get through that, maybe to keep guys on, your most talented people. You know, keep them on for a little bit longer than maybe your competition can, and then attract that talent, and you'll be able to ride it out. But if you have high overhead, and if you're spending money on fancy toys, and if you're going around with your chest puffed up because somehow you think you're a genius because the economy is doing well and, you know, everyone's doing well, hold on a second. Low overhead, stay humble. It's not what you make, it's what you keep.
So I was too young to go through 2008, but I love talking to contractors that made it through because they're resilient in a way that they kind of like bunkered down and made it work. And hearing how they did it, like you're saying, oftentimes it's just like super lean, and they pulled through. But the story is always different. It varies everywhere you go. Some people hired on a bunch of people and just made it through, but it's always interesting to me how that works out. I think we're headed towards a recession myself. If not, we're already in one. Depends on who's declaring that. But before we let you go, Eric, please tell us a little bit more about your book. Full disclosure, I bought it just before hopping on the podcast. Super stoked on it. What can people expect from it?
Yeah, I really appreciate you buying the book, by the way, Matt. And the book is called Construction Genius. It's effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS leadership strategy, sales, and marketing advice for construction companies. And I'll tell you where I got the subtitle from, which I just read, The Effective, Hands-on, Practical. I got that actually from a client. And he said, Eric's leadership training is effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS. And
oh, the best damn testimonial right there.
That's dude, I mean, I loved it. I love that. I love it.
That's good.
And so the premise of the book is simple. People problems are costing your construction company millions, and the book is about how to solve those people problems.
I've said it forever. The building is actually the easy part, and it's running the back end and keeping everybody happy, I would say, is the biggest problem. And I think that you're solving a bit of a disconnect we've got there. So I'm looking forward to reading it. But where can people pick it up? You can pick it up at constructiongeniusbook.com. Okay. And you can then just click on the buy now button, and the website will give you a little more information. There's some reviews already from people coming in there. Dude, I mean, there's some awesome reviews. I'm really, really, really thankful for that. And you can just go out to Amazon and find the book and buy it. It's Kindle. There's the audio version. There's the hardbook version or hardcover, and also the paperback version. Love it. We'll have a link in the show notes for anybody that wants to check it out as well. Yeah, it's pretty. I got to tell you this funny story. Somebody I'm up in Sacramento here, so a guy contacted me. He said, I purchased 7 copies for my leadership team. Will you come by and sign them? And I was like,
That was awesome. What a great thing. So I
Heck
went
yeah.
by and I asked the guy, give me the name of the person and what's their biggest challenge. And so I could say, hey, read chapter 2 or read chapter 6. And I
Oh,
signed
that's
all the books.
awesome.
I know, it was killer. I was really, really
That's
excited to
sweet.
do that.
That's
Yep.
such a personalized thing too.
I know, man. That was awesome. It was just awesome.
That's awesome. So where can people find and connect with you before we go?
You can find me at constructiongenius.com and then also on LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn. You can just search for Eric Anderton. You'll find me there.
He also has a killer podcast. Come on,
yes.
Eric. It
Yes,
has
sorry.
198
Yeah,
something
thank you.
episodes.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, the podcast is Construction Genius. It is it's a highly rated podcast, and I put that down to my guests. I have killer guests on. I love doing the podcast. You guys are doing a great job, by the way. You ask great questions.
Appreciate that.
And so congratulations. Keep doing it. But yeah, my podcast has opened up so many doors for me, and it's a killer place to get to know me.
There's enough to go around the table for everybody, and we will include Eric's podcast, Construction Genius, in the show notes. Highly recommend as well. I mean, there's a plethora of episodes there. And Eric's goal, can we share your goal?
Sure.
On how many
go ahead. Yeah.
Eric's goal is to get to 500 episodes. So we're running with the big dogs, I guess. You're gonna motivate us.
We're trying to get to 20.
No,
you go.
we're past 20.
Oh,
Don't undersell us. Don't undersell us, Matt.
we're getting somewhere.
I think
50.
we're at, oh yeah, we'll get that easily.
There you go. Yeah, hey, dude, just be consistent. Keep doing what you're doing. You guys are good at doing the interviewing. You're doing a terrific job. So, just be consistent. Again, long-term games with long-term people. That's what it's all about.
I love that. That was
That's
my
the goal.
favorite answer to that. Eric, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. Everybody, if you enjoyed this episode and you learned something new, take a couple seconds out of your day. Write us an awesome review. It helps us. We'll see you next time on the Bred to Build podcast.
Hey, this is Eric. Thanks again for listening to this interview with Matt and Breck. Please check out their podcast, Bred to Build. They've got a lot of tremendous episodes on there with great guests. And as I was mentioning, the book, Construction Genius, Effective, Hands-On, Practical, Simple, No BS Leadership, Strategy, Sales, and Marketing Advice for Construction Companies. That's my book. I know you'll enjoy it. Get yourself and your leadership team a copy of the book. And then what you should do is read one chapter a month and meet together for 30 to 60 minutes, discuss the chapter and how you can use and apply it to improve the leadership of your business. Check out the book on Amazon. Also get the Audible if you like to listen to audiobooks. I personally narrated the Audible. I think you'll enjoy it. And thanks again for listening today to Construction Genius.